with respect to our simulators division and our advanced training capabilities division. And they're going to walk you through some of what are the problems that they're faced with, what are some of the opportunities from an industry perspective that are on the horizon for us. And then we're going to open up for some questions. So we have two teammates here that have the white cards. They'll be up and about. So if you have a question for us, we'll be glad to take those. Just wave them down, and they'll get them to you, and then we'll bring them on up here. So our intent here is to transmit and talk to you, and then again answer any questions. If there are no questions, then obviously we'll end early, and then we'll go get a cup of coffee. So with that, if we can go ahead and pull up the charts. I think I have a clicker here, maybe. Uh-oh, they're running. Where's Joe? Oh, do I need to do this? What?
Yes, it's the green button,
oh.
And then the back. The red is back.
As I was. My apologies. The charts are up. Okay. All right. So just what I'm going to do before we jump in, just a little bit about me, and then I'm going to hand it off to Colonel Faronic and Colonel Jaime. So Rod Stevens, PEO for training on the Air Force side. Been in the job about 11 months. Came in January of actually my first TDY as the PEO for PEO training was to come to the first ITSEC planning conference 11, 12 months ago. So organization is relatively new. So for those of you who were at ITSEC last year, would have seen, he's actually here, Colonel Retired Carlos Cunas, who was the acting PEO at the time, talking about what is PEO training. So PEO training is relatively new. So established October of 2024, based upon some realignment with the United States Air Force on how we're realigning to orient ourselves to particular mission areas. So I've been in the job for just a year. I come from the fighters world, so I was a deputy PO in fighters and advanced aircraft prior to that, and pretty much my entire career, both in this suit, uniform and that uniform as an acquisition and maintenance professional on the fighter community. So with that, I'm going to hand it off and let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll jump in.
Hi, I'm Colonel Nick Faronic, and I'm the division chief or senior material leader for the simulators division. Unlike PEO training, we're old. Simulators division has been around since 1974, so just hit our 50th anniversary last year. I also have an acquisition background, a little bit of security cooperation, foreign military sales as well. Sort of span the gamut of Air Force capabilities from an acquisition perspective, space, ISR, some of that super secret squirrely stuff, as well as I said, foreign military sales. Spent some time over in Australia as a security cooperation officer. Yes, very rough assignment. And other than that, be happy to take your questions later. Over to Rick.
Morning, everyone. I'm Colonel Rick Jaime. I'm the Div Chief for Advanced Training Capabilities. We actually just turned 1 year old as an organization recently. Career acquisition officer, space background in my early years, then Missile Defense Agency doing threat modeling. Then did some time at Hanscom, Green Door assignments, also some time in the building for acquisition integration and legislative processes. And then some time more recently in Sentinel at Hill Air Force Base. And my last job before I took over as SML 4 months ago was at the Integrated Development Office, which is a new office that got stood up about a year and a half ago, doing pre-program of record activities. And also I'm excited to be here. I look forward to your questions.
Perfect. Thanks, gentlemen. Okay, so we'll jump right in. You'll see here just kind of a precursor to the presentation, the first couple of slides. This is a presentation that we collectively built a few months ago. I think we started chomping on it in the maybe August, September timeframe as we're leading up to ITSEC. And the exciting part about it is what you're going to see. It's a lot about the acquisition philosophy of what we're trying to do within PEO training, and it aligns to the Arsenal of Freedom strategy that was just recently announced on the 7th of November. So it's good to know that we're aligned, but it had nothing to do with what Secretary Hexeth has put out in his charge to the force. So we'll jump right in. Just a little bit about our philosophy. So, you know, our overall motto for PEO training is air dominance begins here. We'll talk a little bit about who we are from a division perspective, and we're going to focus on these two divisions that the gentleman just introduced to. But the big thing is you know, we need to ensure we're oriented around mission outcomes. And what does that mean? When we listen to our senior leaders and we listen to the force, It's really what you see here in the quote, what Secretary Mank stated in his most recent posture hearing this past May, when he was up on the Hill talking about the importance of, one, it's our people that are the most valuable resource from a strategic competitive advantage. Two, it's how we train them to ensure that we have an emphasis on readiness. Since then, and I mentioned it in my opening salvo yesterday when we started the ceremony, was the Chief of Staff in his letter to the force talked about, we need to fly, fight, fix, mainly focusing on aircraft, but he talked about training, and he really identified that we have to actually, as airmen, we have to train with purpose, we have to train with discipline, and we have to train with realism. And so that really resonates in PEO training. It really resonates in our simulators division, and it resonates in our advanced training capabilities division here as we move forward. So from who we are from a PEO training perspective by the numbers, again, we're responsible for the entire lifecycle management of training systems. That spans from the traditional aircraft, so any new second lieutenant that's been identified to be a pilot in the United States Air Force currently right now goes into the T6-2 Texan, and then on to their respective track, whether it's fighter bomber fundamentals or going to their flying training units for the heavy aircraft. But we have a division responsible for that, and then all the way up to our new T7 Red Hawk advanced pilot trainer that we're building, and then the associated simulators and advanced training capabilities. So you can kind of see there just the overall spectrum of what it means to actually be a lifecycle manager and be a program manager. It's always from the beginning to the end. Who we are from a kind of a demographic perspective, you can see we have a budget of just over $7 billion in active year funds. Our workforce is comprised of, we call them functionals, but essentially it's the core competencies. So what are the core competencies we need to have in our organization to be able to deliver the capabilities that our warfighting teammates need to ensure that we're delivering to the mission outcomes? So 1,400 plus, that number's been fluctuating around 1,400 to 1,500. Over 300 programs that we're responsible for at any given time with a smattering. There's a whole bunch of acronyms that you can see there, but it's anything from your engineers to your program managers, logisticians, your cybersecurity folks, IT folks, contracting, financial managers, intel, personnel, and the like. So without that core team, we can't achieve the mission outcomes that we're responsible for. Okay, so as a training directorate, our mission is to develop, deliver, and sustain integrated training capabilities to enable war-winning power. You can see our vision there. We want to be a trusted provider of adaptive and innovative training capabilities. I briefly highlighted, so we have 4 divisions in PEO training. 2 of them aren't here today because really I made the decision that they weren't relevant to this particular conference. Really wanted to focus in on the modeling and simulation piece. So the 2 that aren't here are on the left-hand side, so the T-7A Red Hawk stationed out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, again focusing on that newest training aircraft for Air Education Training Command for first aircraft delivery this week. So a big milestone for the team, with the first one being delivered to Randolph on the 5th of December, this Friday. But that in itself has its own simulation system known as the ground-based training system. Currently right now, the T7 program is managing that. At a point in time to be determined, it'll eventually transition itself over into the division that has the subject matter expertise from a technology perspective into Colonel Feronic's division, but we're not there yet on that one. The other division is a legacy training aircraft division, and again, that team is actually at 3 bases, led by Miss Abby Pogorzelski, which is headquartered at Tinker Air Force Base, but we do have teammates at Hill out at Utah and then in Ohio. They're responsible for approximately 1,500 aircraft, so they support the United States Air Force, United States Navy, and our international partners, and actually NASA as well, across nearly 20 plus countries. And then we have the 2 divisions that these 2 gentlemen lead here. The upper right, the Advanced Training Capabilities Division led by Colonel Rick Jaime. We're really going to talk about that. We'll deep dive into his organization. And then our Simulators Division led by Colonel Nick Feronic. So that's who we are. Again, air dominance is what we're focused on. It really begins here in ensuring that we're producing the pilots, and then we're ensuring that the proficiency of pilots, maintainers, and anybody who needs to train in a simulated environment is getting the training they need. Okay, so the challenge we have, this really starts to kind of pivot towards what Admiral Duffy stated in his opening comments yesterday when we kicked off ITSEC. If anybody saw the fireside chat with my boss, Mr. William Bailey, he's the acting service acquisition executive, starts talking about, well, what do we need to do differently? And some of this is actually going to be coupled and changed as we continue to work with the Department of War and as a service underneath the Arsenal of Freedom transformation and the acquisition transformation that Secretary Hegseth and Honorable Duffy have charged the force to take on. So we have a ton of challenges that we're impeded by. A lot of these are now going to be OBE. You can see on the left-hand side the JSIDS process. So on the left-hand side, that gold circle, kind of the requirements process. So that is changing, and we know that Honorable Duffy and team are working that. Secretary Hegseth stated that JSIDS will be no more. What that turns out to be is to be determined. There's the PPPE process, essentially the funding process. What does that mean? And if anybody saw the senior leader panel yesterday, that actually took place in this room where Lieutenant General Tabor was present. He is the A8, so he is the programmer for the United States Air Force. What he was talking about is if we don't change that process, the ability to truly execute the acquisition and transformation piece is going to be very difficult for the services. And so I know that there's intent to work with our legislative branch teammates, ensuring that we get the statutory authorities to make some of those changes there. And then there's the acquisition process itself. And so that in itself is really getting after how do we actually acquire systems. And what Mr. Bailey stated yesterday in his fireside chat, he actually, just kind of a little bit of a salvo, he was in charge of, before he's in his current position, he worked in AQX. Think of it as kind of the action group for the Air Force for acquisitions. They pulled all of the data on major programs to see what are the scorecards. And what he highlighted was from a cost perspective, we had about a C+, I think he stated we did, if we were to grade ourselves, C+, a D. From a performance perspective, I think he said we had a D. I'm sorry, from a schedule perspective, he had a D. From a performance perspective, we had an A+. And essentially what he was highlighting is that we were willing to pay more and take our time to get an A on a particular capability. And that's really what we're being challenged to look at differently now, is working with our operator teammates, working with the warfighter, those in the field, is trying to get to what is the right level of requirements that are needed to be able to deliver a capability at a point in time as opposed to getting it perfect. And that's really what we're focusing on. The middle of the chart just highlights the acquisition process, and it's really looking at acquisition of major weapon systems from an aircraft perspective. The steep line is just highlighting how long it's taken us to actually develop certain platforms, comparative to industry and how the commercial aircraft industry is able to produce aircraft at a higher rate of speed. And so we have to think differently, we have to do differently. We're doing that on the T7 program, and we're looking to ways that we can do that here with our simulators and advanced training capabilities division. And so the last piece is again, the biggest takeaway is we need to be focused on mission outcomes. And so you can see that there's a whole bunch of words there on what we need to do. It's a cultural shift. There's obviously process shifts that we need to do. It's about ensuring that we have the right character and the right internal fortitude to make some hard decisions, working with our operational teammates to drive acquisitions towards mission outcomes. Okay, and the other thing I'll just highlight is the character war is changing. And if you've seen and had the opportunity to read the Arsenal of Freedom strategy, I encourage you to do so. And I know that NDIA is noted that they have it out on their website. The bottom line is that our adversaries are starting to beginning to outpace us on their ability to develop technology or ability to develop military capability. And so we need to look at how we actually deliver capability to our warfighting teammates. We need to be more responsive. We need to have speed, flexibility, and agility on how we're actually delivering things. And so really what this chart is saying is what are we doing to ensure that we inculcate that operational mindset culture within an acquisition workforce? How are we doing that within PEO training? What can we do to work with our industrial base partners to ensure that we're all aligned to the North Star of mission outcomes? So how do we get there? And so it's really just a mind shift from an acquisition perspective. Okay, so culture drives results. So I mentioned culture, and I think this is my last slide before I hand it off to my teammates to my left. Really, it's not just about a good business decision. It's about what is the best operational solution that we need to actually drive towards. And so it's optimizing programmatic risk to operational risk. And so we have to, as acquirers, really need to be in lockstep with our operational teammates, having hard and difficult conversations about how are we going to optimize what the programmatic risk is for actually delivering a capability that may not be fully meeting your requirements, but to ensure we're getting something in the operator's hands to meet their need. And so we really have to have that mindset. So acquisition must be more than just a business deal. It really needs to be focused on mission outcomes. So the recurring theme for PEO training and where we're trying to drive towards is mission outcomes. How do we partner with the industrial base to do so? And I'll talk a little bit about things that we're going to be doing at the directorate level. I think it's my last couple of charts when we're done with Nick and Rick's presentation, is things that we're looking to do in the directorate to open up more opportunities to industry and things that we can get after to drive some more horizontal integration from a mission outcome perspective. And so with that, I will hand it off to Nick, and I guess you want me to be your clicker, or you want to go from there?
I'm happy to click, sir.
All right, very good. It
Thank
took me a while to get there, so.
It's true. Hopefully not as steep a learning curve. All right, so they gave me all of one slide, so I crammed it all in there. There's a lot on this slide, but I'm going to walk you through it. I like to say this is the simulator's problem statement, but I'm going to talk about the three facets of that problem statement because there's a couple themes that basically underpin those these three facets. So I'll start out by saying, as the simulator's SML division chief, I see firsthand the critical role that simulators play in ensuring our warfighters are ready, essentially, to face any challenge. And I think the environment we're in, as Mr. Stevens and all the senior leaders throughout the week have highlighted, the environment continues to face evolving challenges. And so I want to talk very frankly with you. There's a lot of familiar faces in the audience. I think it's fantastic. I have, some of my core team, a lot of our industry partners, and then obviously our MAGCOM. And it's perfect because you all need to hear this, right? You all need to understand where we're coming from. And so I'll start on the left. We obviously have to maintain concurrency. And for those of you who are like, all I'm really saying is the simulator or training device that we're fielding needs to mirror, match, replicate the aircraft or weapon system or maintenance system, whatever we're trying to field. And so the acting vice chief earlier this year put out a memo essentially directing it, mandating it, which is fantastic because I think it gives us a little more priority in the discussion. But at the same time, I think it almost goes without saying. We don't want to lag behind the airframe because we get in a situation of lagging training capability, potentially negative training. We have to focus again on our training being as relevant as possible. And so, and then, oh, by the way, it drives costs, right? When we don't have a concurrent platform, we've got to send then the operator up in the aircraft, and I promise you a flying hour of name your platform is much more expensive than my simulator. And we have a team of folks that have looked into that, built that business case, and we report those metrics annually as well. The second piece is connectivity. So today we're talking about CAF DMO, MAF DMO, some of the other distributed mission operations networks. In the future, we'll be talking about connecting to JSE and potentially other networks. The issue we face, though, is that cybersecurity environment, the guidance, the policy is also ever-changing. And so we're trying to hit a moving target there. And frankly, it feels like a little bit of a cat and mouse game, and it's one that we're losing, right? I cannot keep up with that changing environment. Need your help, specifically industry, to help with that one. And honestly, it should be a risk management discussion. Again, back to how much operational risk do we want to take versus the cyber threats that are out there. It ends up being a compliance discussion and one that's where I struggle to keep up. We have some and I'll talk about it a little bit later, antiquated systems running very old operating systems and other software that we are trying to keep up with, but at the end of the day, I will never be able to meet 742 mandatory controls on these systems that are 30 to 40 years old. So that's a struggle. It's a big part of our problem statement and one that, frankly, the boss and I both spend a lot of time on. And then finally, I move over to probably the most fundamental and frankly the one that helps address all of these other issues is I called it enterprise integration because that's a term I think we banty about, and it means different things to different people. For me, there's several facets of enterprise integration. What we're showing on the chart is attempting to get to more open architectures, common data standards, and things like that. And so that sounds a lot like SCARS. So that is the purpose of this Lego chart. I don't want to brief too much of it because that's certainly up, I think, next in Rick's slides. But for too long, we've basically relied on or focused on, I'll say closed architectures. I know I'm oversimplifying this. Closed architectures, proprietary interfaces, siloed data, and we need to break all of that, right? We need to get to more common platforms, common applications, government-owned architectures, and the like. But again, I think that requires a team effort. It requires industry to come up with the great ideas and help us implement. It requires the MAGCOM to understand why it's a priority and how it can help us, and then fund it accordingly. So I talked about what's underpinning all of this. You see JSE stretching across. I think JSE as the common architecture, as the enterprise architecture, could certainly help to address all of these, concurrency, connectivity, and that enterprise integration. But I think what's really underpinning all of this is a resource discussion, right? A priority of resources. And I have very limited resources, and I need to figure out how to apply it to all three of those facets. And so there is at least one person, probably many in this room, who think concurrency is the most important. Hopefully, most of my MAGCOM partners are thinking concurrency, and that's where we're going to apply the majority of the resources. But I know there are others in this room who are like, nope, your most important is connectivity, and we got to apply resources there. And while that's 100% true, the argument then goes to, okay, what am I giving up in terms of concurrency to go address cybersecurity? And for what gain, right? Again, back to risk management versus compliance. And then finally, there's a whole group of folks that think enterprise integration and SCARS and JSE are the most important. Frankly, I'm going to talk for 8 to 10 minutes. Rick's going to talk for 30 because it is the most important, right? It is where we should be looking and focusing. But that does take away from resources to address my current problem of ensuring we are training our warfighters with relevant systems. So again, not to get too much into it, but right now SCARS is starting to help us address some of these issues, specifically cybersecurity and connectivity. We have a slide coming up that talks about we've already connected a couple of our systems, and they're connected back to the SCARS Operations Center, and that allows us to do some of the mandatory cyber updates actually relatively cheaply and quickly. And so that's all goodness, but at the end of the day, we really do have to focus our efforts where the warfighters need them the most. And then, again, back to JSE, I don't want to belabor it because Rick's going to do that for you, but JSE, frankly, does become the answer, right? It is going to help us get to the most realistic training we can possibly provide, but on my side of the fence, it certainly complicates the equation as well, because I've got to worry about, again, that older legacy system, and the look and feel of the JSE version, call it a PIAB, platform in a box, has to mirror or match that as close as possible, because otherwise we get into another one of those negative training situations. So anyway, I think ultimately addressing these challenges, it obviously requires a collaborative effort. That's why I started out saying it's great to see, a little bit of everybody in the audience. It takes, again, back to a culture shift of this is not us versus them. We're all under the same tent. We're all, whatever euphemism you want me to use, we're all rowing in the same canoe, hopefully in the same direction. And I think ultimately it's industry's ingenuity and support with the MAGCOM's, priority and understanding of the situation, and bringing a little bit of funding too, that always helps, is what's going to get us sort of to overcome the three facets. So with that, I'll hand it over to Rick. I'm going to click the button for you, Rick, because this is tough. All right, good.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay, so good morning again. I'm going to provide an update on two of my programs in my portfolio, SCARS and the Joint Simulation Environment. I have others. I have LMOC, P5, P6, the range emitters, but I'm going to focus primarily on those two programs that tie to the problem statement that Nick just mentioned. So for both of those program updates, I'm going to just have it's going to be a three-facet approach. We're going to speak basics, terminologies to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music as far as understanding of some of the basic definitions that we use for SCARS and JFC. And also a status of the programs where we are today and where we're heading in 2026. And then some items for industry help needed. So the first fundamental thing to understand with SCARS is that standards are the foundation to establish a common architecture. So what this slide shows is a conceptual example of what the Lego chart looks like when we apply MOSA via SCARS standards over time, and how the Lego chart, a Lego block chart on the left, corresponds to the standards roadmap on the right. So the biggest challenge that our training systems have from the Lego chart perspective is the long red brick, and that is the host simulation, which is unique to the OFP software coming from the jet that must be matched in the training system to maximize concurrency. And the reason that is challenging is because all the subsystems around it that touch that OFP must conform to that OFP. So the green bricks above and below the red brick, those are interfaces that are being defined by SCARS to enable interchangeable and reusable subsystems that interact with the OFP. So for example, standards error models, interfaces, and OMS interfaces. The dark blue bricks at the top, those are your typical human interfaces subsystems, so control panels, HOTAS, image generators, and as you can see on the right, via the SCARS Engineering Capabilities Board, or the SCCB, which is the form that we use to formally adopt standards, we started to formally adopt some of those blue bricks in 2024. For example, image generators and XR interfaces. The purple bricks at the bottom, those are, they represent reusable software models that run in the background, they do all the processing. So for example, JAC grid services for physics interactions, that was adopted as a standard in 2024. And we're targeting whiskey modeling, munitions modeling in 2026 as a standard adoption. And on the roadmap on the right, only the three top ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that are currently being implemented by the training system. For the rest of the standards and for any future ones that we adopt, the SCARS integration IPT will work with the SPOS IPT, primarily WNS's IPT teams, to put the SCARS standards on contract and determine which simulators, which locations are next to implement the standards based on priorities, based on funding availability, et cetera. But the overall objective or goal where we're heading for standards is to continually to push to adopt standards where we have them implemented by the simulators to get to a standard simulator where most, if not all, of those Lego blocks follow adopted standards with well-defined interfaces so we can reuse components, we can reuse data as much as possible with the goal of lowering sustainment cost, drive competition, promote technology insertion, which if you look at the Arsenal of Freedom acquisition transformation strategy, all those are mentioned in the paragraph that talks about MOSA. And so MOSA is nothing new, but this is where we're heading with SCARS to drive that horizontal integration to establish the common architecture for our training systems. Okay. With that, here's our SCARS line of efforts. I think most of you or some of you may have seen this slide before or a different variation of it. So for LOE number 1, since its very inception over 5.5 years ago when we awarded the contract, the primary focus of SCARS has been delivering centralized cybersecurity and cyber maintenance to ensure our training systems are compliant with the latest and evolving cyber policy, RMF requirements, to make sure we standardize how we implement recurring software patching and scanning of our training systems. So what you see there is on the left is a picture of a training system that's connected to the on-premise equipment, which is a common hardware stack, which is connected to the SCARS Operations Center via a wide area network. So this slide, excuse me, I think I got ahead of myself, sorry.
Do we need to take the
Yep.
away from them?
Yeah,
there you go. So for LOE number 1, what that does is, that allows us to do is to, for the training systems to leverage the SCARS Enterprise ATO at multiple levels of classification to shorten the timeline for each training systems to go and secure their own ATO. And so for that LOE number 1 to occur, to be implemented, the training system must implement the SCARS control standards that were highlighted in the yellow in the previous slide. And for them to have, to be able to integrate to the on-premise equipment, to have access to the SOC, to have access to the software that's going to allow them to have remote scanning and patching. So it's a lot of work. It takes about a year, and we're trying to make that go a little faster. But all the efforts that are involved are site service, hardware deliveries, hardware installation, integration, testing, verification. There's a lot of work for each location to actually implement LOE number 1. And the thing to remember with LOE number 1 is that it's the catalyst as it's going to get all the training systems to that common hardware solution that's fundamental for us to implement LOE number 2 and LOE number 3. So for LOE number 2, that's building out of that common architecture. And at the core of doing that is not only the standards that are fundamental and foundational that I mentioned in the previous slide, but also the need to virtualize or containerize as many simulator software applications and OFP onto the SCARS on-premise equipment as possible. So when we virtualize the simulator software, the Air Force, we as an Air Force can start to eliminate unique hardware costs that are associated with operating system upgrades. And also we can break that hardware dependency for each specific vendor because we're now standardizing the hardware element because now we're working out of one common hardware solution, the on-premise equipment. And the main benefit there is to shorten the time to see concurrency with the jet because we can iterate at the speed of software and not hardware. We can decouple the hardware from the software, and that also will allow us to lower sustainment cost. And then for line of effort number 3, with that common hardware infrastructure, we can build out a SCARS library where we can use common applications across training systems. So the idea there is that we build an application once, we make it available in the library, and we make it available to as many training systems that need it. Because today we have multiple training systems that pay for the same model many times over, and so we want to be more efficient in how we procure data and models going forward. Okay, so here's a high-level roadmap for each of those line of efforts. This is going to be a build slide. So for LOE number 1, that didn't work out.
It built.
Okay, that's fine. It was supposed to be one by one, but that's fine. All right, for LOE number 1, today we have 4 ACC and AMC platforms that are actively taking actions to connect the training system to the SOC. And we have more than a handful already on multiple bases. This is what Nick was mentioning. Already connected to the SOC and getting scan and patches updates on a regular basis. And by the end of the year, we're going to have an entire training system at each of the locations where that training system is providing training for our warfighters on the SCARS enterprise. And going forward for line of effort number 1, as I mentioned, the SCARS team will work with WNS and their IPTs and HAF A3 to determine which platforms are next to be the priority for integration, based on funding, based on priorities, et cetera. For line of effort number 2, that is the common architecture. The SCARS team worked with the F-16 CLS contractor to demonstrate the viability of the OPE being able to host the OFP software. So in FY24, that was demonstrated successfully with an unclassified OFP load. And in FY25, it was demonstrated successfully with a classified OFP load for the F-16. And going forward, the SCARS team is planning to field on-premise hosting, premise equipment hosting virtualized software for 2 different types of ACC simulators. And we're starting to roadmap what other training systems are next to virtualize their software into the on-premise equipment, again, in collaboration with HAF A3 and with our MatchCom partners as well. And for line of effort number 3, we're already taking actions to put applications into our library. So I'll give you 2 examples. One example is the mission planning software for our simulator instructors. And so we're beginning integration this quarter in collaboration with the 309th SWAG at Hill Air Force Base to make that application available in the library to help our instructors to run scenarios. Another one is the Geospatial Data Repository, or the GDR. That's an effort to make available a common geospatial database for all the training systems to ensure everyone is looking at the same world when they train. There's only one world, there's only one set of mountains when you go to a specific location, so we're going to build it one time, we're going to build it correctly, and we're going to make it available for everyone. And so we're working with the data provider to incrementally deliver different regions of the world, and with the goal of the full worldwide map being available on FY28. And when that's complete, all the training systems can pull any region of the world they need to conduct their training right from the library. And going forward, our team is starting to build a strategy, a task them to build a strategy to determine which models are going to be the next ones to be hosted in the library that make sense to be hosted in the library, such as applications that are utilized by JSC, such as NGTS. And again, for LOA number 3, the goal there is to minimize costs and concurrency issues by using the same source data. Okay, so here's a few items, a number of items for where we can use some help for industry when it comes to SCARs. Again, the approach for SCARs is to apply MOSA, so we need a competitive market that gives us choices and options for multiple products that can be plugged into a modular design for both hardware and software. And so to make that work, we need industry to continue to innovate and deliver the latest products that they've developed internally. That's what we're here at ITSEC, to see what's available. But all those solutions need to be able to integrate to our training systems with a standard interface, and that's critical. Also, we continue to need your input. Again, that's why we're here in industry. That's why we have one-on-ones. That's why we meet with so many of you. Our training systems need to continue to evolve with the new technologies, and so we need information on established and emerging technologies, ideas, solutions, products that you have available that you think we as an enterprise, in collaboration with you, we can benefit as we build out that common architecture. And the last two there you see are related to cybersecurity. So as I said earlier, cybersecurity requirements continue to evolve. And so we want to encourage our industry partners to be aware of those requirements because that often can limit our product choices. And so and we want to make sure everyone can compete in the Air Force training space, and being aware of cybersecurity requirements is a must. So for example, licensing methods. We want licensing methods that do not require connection to the internet or hardware keys, because most of our training systems operate on a closed loop network. And also we need our products to have access to the OEM for any software or firmware updates required for patches and scanning as needed. Okay, I'll switch gears now to the joint simulation environment. Again, for this portion of the brief, I'll just provide a basic overview of the program for those of you who are new to the industry, who are not as familiar with this program. I've been in the seat for 4 months, and there isn't a week or sometimes days that go by where I don't learn something new about JSC. It's a very large, it's a very complex, and it's a very scalable program that we're undertaking. So the whole purpose of JSC is to develop that capability to enable 5th and 6th gen high-end tactics training and operational testing in a realistic, multi-domain, high-fidelity, high-density threat environment, because our operators and our platforms cannot test or fly or do the things they need to do in the open air because our ranges are not big enough, because of security constraints. We cannot do many on many scenarios. We cannot integrate space, and we cannot employ EW. But in JSC, we will. We'll be able to do those things. In JSC, we can put our operators in a challenging environment against red adversary engagements they have never seen before. So I'll walk you from left to right here on this slide. On the left side, you see the FIAPS. That's a fighter in a box. So whether it's an F-35 or an F-22 or E-2D, that is a very high fidelity full rehost of the OFP running on a commercial off-the-shelf server. And that includes the sensors, the mission systems of that blue platform. Next is Whiskey, the weapons server common environment. And that is a high fidelity weapons flyout. So whether it's air-to-air, AMRAAM, AIM-9X, or air-to-surface weapons, JDAM, SDB, or any future or an emerging weapon that is developed using a defined architecture with a well-defined interface to integrate that real blue weapon model into JSC. In the bottom, those are the constructive entities modeled out of NGTS, the Next Generation Threat System, and that's how we provide constructive entities into our battle space for the red and blue side. So when we don't have a PIAP for an entity that we need in a scenario, we can use a model built in NGTS to provide a constructive representation of that system in the environment. And it is not as high fidelity as a PIAP, but depending on the requirements for the test or training scenario, it will meet the intent. So we have F-15, F-16, B-2, and many other models in NGTS running in the background to provide that realism for a training scenario. For OT, for example, back when F-35 underwent its OT campaign for Block 3F, E2D had a constructive model. It provided surveillance tracks via Lin 16, and it met the intent of that OT campaign for Block 3F. And on the NGTS red side, that's where we integrate Intel-derived models approved by the IC for red surface, red SAMs, and red air. On the bottom right is DIATS, Digital Integrated Air Defense Systems. And that is a product built by the 772nd Air Force Test Squadron to command and control constructive adversary integrated air defenses, and it includes command and control between the red ground entities and the early warning. And on the right is VATS, the Virtual Air Threat Systems. So that is an operator in the loop for red air, and we in WNR are the SPO for it. So for that system, we have a manned red cockpit, and we can use a drop-down menu, and we can select any model series that we have in our red library, and we could put an operator in the loop manning that system. And what that does is that complicates the radar picture for the blue pilot because it adds realism to the training scenario. And then finally, down the middle is a grid. This is the set of racks you see in the back, RF, IR, RCS. That is the global reusable interface domain. So that is the core software that does all the interactions across the electromagnetic spectrum between all the entities in the environment. And that is what provides the physics-based modeling for the common services. So RF services, IR services, RF and IR propagation, RCS at multiple frequencies. So if you're a radar seeking a target, GRID ensures that the target provides you with an accurate RCS based on the frequency you're transmitting. Line of sight services, so terrain, buildings, clouds. If you are on RF mode and there's a cloud between you and the target, line of sight services will propagate that RF data and the pilot will be able to see the target. But if you are in IR mode, the data will not be propagated for IR services and the pilot will not see the target. So it provides that realism. And weather services and effects, and it does all that physics-based modeling and then real-time computations done by the GPUs in real time. Okay, so that's a high-level overview of 101 for JSC. Okay, so the slides are, the industry help items got ahead of the slide, but that's fine. I'll just talk real quick about where we are with each of the sites to provide you an update on what each organization is doing at a high level. So start with the NOC-8D, Pax River. Pax River is still leading the development of the environment, but we're working for the Air Force to be less reliant or to not be so completely reliant on the Navy to develop the environment. So we have them collaborating with the Air Force SWEX, the software engineering groups, and they're collaborating on a DevSecOps environment where both of them are working together on the cloud to develop the environment. They release a new baseline capability of the environment, the JTB, the JSC technical baseline, every 6 months or so. And that is based on user-level requirements that are prioritized and validated by ACC, who's our lead MATCHCOM. So that includes anything from NGTS, Intel-validated threat models, new weapons added to WISC, or any grid updates from anything that I just mentioned in the previous slide. For F-22, we're handing off the LSI role, the lead system integrator role, from the Navy to the SWEX. And that to be able for them to integrate those updated F-22 OFP releases coming from Lockheed Martin Marietta into the environment. And that is good for the Air Force and the Navy. It allows the Navy to focus on Navy platforms to be integrated into the JSC, and allows the Air Force to focus on Air Force platforms to be integrated into the JSC. On the VMV side, in 2026, the 445th Test Squadron will become the lead VMV organization, taking that role from the Navy for F-22 FIAP and for the environment. On the training side, NOC-AD continues to host a lot of training from the schoolhouse, from Top Gun, and multiple fighter squadrons. As of this month, they've trained about 2,300 pilots so far. And with JITC Nellis stand-up earlier this year, we now, as an Air Force, can provide a training relief valve to Pax River, as we have more Air Force pilots going to Nellis as opposed to Pax River to conduct that operational training. For our JITCs, the Joint Integrated Test and Training Center, so for JITC Nellis, we established an early operational capability, EOC, back in the spring of this year. And today the capability is 8 F-35 PIAPs, 8 VATs, and NGTS threat models. And we're working to bring the F-22s there next year. In the training that's conducted today at JITC Nellis, the primary customer is the 6th Weapons School, co-located in Nellis. And they also train multiple CAF units. They've trained about 100 pilots and over 400 events so far, as that capability just got started this year. And we're working with ACC to expand the capability for the Warfare Center by delivering improvements to the environment, increased threat representation, new weapon models, high-fidelity PIAPs, improved visuals, and we're working with ACC on priorities to add new weapon system PIAPs in the future so that JITC Nellis can run or can scale from doing unit-level training to large force exercises in the future. For JITC Elmendorf, groundbreaking of that facility occurred in September of this year, and construction started a month later. And we're working with ACC on the requirements, on the CONOPS, and on the long-term plans for the facility. For our DITRs, the Digital Test and Training Range, those are under the Air Force Test Center. So our DITR Nellis is co-located across the street from JITC Nellis for synergy purposes. And the primary mission of DITR Nellis is operational testing for those systems that need a digital environment for the certain test runs as part of their OT campaign. So there, today, they have the VATs, the F-22s, and they're finalizing the F-35 hardware installation in 2026 to integrate all of them with the latest version of the environment as they build out that capability for OT. For DITR Edwards, the primary mission there is enterprise VMV activities. They have the PIAPs there, they're installing the environment, and they're working on integration and accreditation of the facility. And there's still a lot of work left to be done in 2026 for us to be able, as an Air Force, to utilize the facility for DT, for environment VMV, and for experimentation as well. And the three primary missions, as I mentioned, for each of these facilities are DT, OT, and operational training at each of the sites. But the key there is they all run the same JTB, the same software, the same threats, they should, and the same capabilities. So we can run any missions at any of those locations. So if one organization or location is maxed out, we can move that mission to another one that perhaps has the bandwidth, because they all run the same JTB, the same battle space. The only difference is which PIAPs are there, because JITC Nellis will have all the CAF systems, the fighters, the bombers that will be needed for training, for operational training, while the DITRs will have the PIAPs that are there that are required by Alphatech for a test campaign. Okay, industry help. So I'll start with the top left and then move clockwise. So develop, deliver platform sensor weapons models with urgency. So if you're a prime or a sub working on a contract to deliver a weapon model or a PIAP, we just ask that you look for efficiencies in internal processes to streamline as many things possible to deliver the system in a timely manner and with a sense of urgency. The platform or weapons PO that you're in contract with should be providing you with contract language, clear requirements, and a JTB compliance document. And if they're not, then please let us in W&R know so we can help with that. Needing 2 to 3+ years from requirement to PIAP delivery does not help operators to be able to use and leverage the capability the JSC has to offer. in the timely, in the sense of urgency they need it by. And it does not help us to deliver mission outcomes when we need those by. Okay, the big block, blue box on the top right, the first one, virtualized models to support PIAP hosting. This is related to what I mentioned already with SCAR. So if you're building a model, a sensor or weapon or aircraft for JSC, please explore technologies to virtualize or containerize as many software components as possible to break that link between the hardware dependency and your model, so that every time you deliver an updated OFP, we don't have to replace the entire PIAP CSR or the computer support rack, which is the set of hardware stack that runs the PIAP. And that would be a game changer for affordability. If we're always getting rid of the tech stack every time we have to replace or upgrade the OFP, it's going to get very expensive very quickly. So if you get on contract, one of the first things you should do is to think long term, how you can build a software pipeline up front, so that when the jet updates the OFP model, the digital model goes with it, so they can be integrated with JSC at the same time. Again, decoupling the hardware from the software, so we can field OFP models every year or two much, much quicker and affordably than we can today. Engage platforms posed with new technologies and opportunities. So again, we've heard a lot about AI this week in many of the panels before. AI, when you think of training, you think of how do we use AI for training scenarios, mission planning. But one of the things we're talking about here, when we're talking about engaging with the platforms posed, I'm talking about AI or large language models to build JSC compliant code and appropriate documentation that goes with it, with technologies like vibe coding. Vibe coding is becoming very popular for software development and code development. That's something I think we can definitely leverage and explore for JSC code development. Cloud computing, edge computing, digital engineering. A lot of these are not new, and there's things that I'm not mentioning that just please come talk to us. As you are familiar with JSC, what are the things that you think we can get help from to make things go faster and be more prudent with how we use our taxpayer dollars? Visual solutions, we know there's a large variety of visual solutions out there. We just want you to make sure that you ensure the solutions balance performance and size and that they meet the requirement. So we would encourage you to explore visual solutions that meet the fine footprint and power constraints, so we can move away from large displays to smaller visual ones that still meet the requirement. There may still be a need for large domes, but that should not be the going-in assumption. We believe the technology is there to go smaller, so we can do more training in the same space, same physical space, try to maximize the square footage to do more training, because the cost of the physical space is going up, especially when we're talking about classified space. XR, VR technologies. Obviously, we want security considerations. NOC-AD's doing a lot of work with XR, VR, and we know there's a lot of technologies that have been demonstrated. You walk on the floor, half the booths have XR, VR goggles. So the solutions must meet data accreditation requirements, data encryption, hardware security, secure networks. But also some of the things we've heard in some of the other panels, to make sure the solutions address user feedback to avoid negative training. So poor image fidelity, cyber sickness or motion sickness, field of view requirements, system latency, refresh rates, motion versus visual fidelity, human eye resolution, headset comfort. All those things need to be addressed if we're going to use XR, VR for JSC, because we got to make sure that operators can do the training, and the technology they have should not be an obstacle for them to get that training. And the last one there is established relationship with WNR to facilitate sharing of the code. So we encourage industry partners to get involved with us through ACRETA. That's a great way to get initial learning for JSC, to see what's under the hood, to see how it works, and to see how your company can get involved and help us as we continue to develop the environment based on your specific area of expertise, such as things like the electromagnetic spectrum operations. You can get JSC integrated into your SIL to determine how the environment would work with your model or platform, and to see what things you need to adjust or how we can work together. So if you already have a contract with JSC or through a prime or a sub, or you already have a CRETA, We can provide you the environment software. We can give you a GSI test harness, a JSC integration kit, as well as working with SWX, a copy of Aspects, the advanced simulation platform for experimentation, and that is a platform-agnostic aircraft surrogate for pre-FIAB, for early development. And one item that is not mentioned there is data management and analytics. We know that the sites are going to produce large volumes of data. Pax River is doing that. We're going to have thousands of pilots being trained, thousands of events when you add the Ditters, Jittagnalis, and eventually Elmendorf. So how do we use that data? How do we not let it just sit there? How do we make sense of it? How do we analyze it correctly and make sure that it provides us useful and valuable information that we can share with the test and training community? So we're looking for creative approaches to tackle that problem. The bottom right, that's an industry opportunity. That's the JSC Contractor Logistics Solution, CLS, and that is for operations and sustainment for our sites. We're looking at the JETX, but we're also looking for opportunities to use that contract for the Ditters, as well as at Fallon and working with PMA 205. And we're working that acquisition strategy. We lost some momentum there in the month of October for the reasons you know. But we're targeting the FOPR release. I'm sorry, that date is wrong. It's not summer of 2026. It's the spring of 2027. It's March of 2027, but we are going to have a draft FOPR in the fall of 2026 and an RFI, and we're going to need your inputs to make that a better product. And then Vader 2 on the left, that is a follow-on to our current VATS contract. Again, we have that system deployed to Pax River, the Ditters, and Jittagnalis, and we're targeting a FOPR release next month. And there's more information at the booth for both of those. And sir, that is my last slide after a 30-minute monologue.
Man. Get a drink.
I do need some water. Thank you very much.
So I ran in the 5K this morning, and your presentation was more exhausting than the 5K. It was a great presentation.
The sacrificial lamb to take up some time. Yeah, sir. So we do have a lot more details, as Rick said, in the booth about very specific industry opportunities. This kind of highlights just the myriad of proposal requests that will be published in the next 2 to 3 years. There are some in his portfolio. There's a bunch on my portfolio. I would not, please don't quote me to the dates here. Like I look at C-17, and if that's my timeline, I'm in a lot of trouble. So I'm not gonna go out and say all those are perfect, but we do have a lot more details, and the team's available at our booth, 249 and I think 1339, another one of our booths. So I don't want to, sir, if you want me to hit any more details on that, I'm
you got
happy
it. And so I would just say if the questions are going around, I'll start taking the cards as we near. So we're about 30 minutes out, so we can start doing Q&A. So I'm just going to pivot just kind of to bring this home. This really has been the Nick and Rick show in that respect. What I just wanted to talk about is you can see there's a lot of opportunities. There's a ton of opportunities as presented on the last slide by Colonel Faronic for our legacy systems. And then as Colonel Jaime walked us through, a lot going on in the world of JSC and SCARs and a lot of opportunities. One thing that, again, that I have recognized and collectively with the leadership team within PEO training is how do we actually start to look at driving more, what are our gaps within what I'll call this ecosystem of modeling, simulation, and training? And how do we get after those particular gaps from an enterprise perspective? And again, this was something that we started talking about prior to this Arsenal of Freedom strategy that Secretary Hexeth has put in place. But essentially what we're doing in PEO training is we're taking an organizational initiative to source internally through our, not increasing the size of our organization, but internally to our organization is creating what you can see there is a training integration office. And what we're trying to do, again, is embracing the mechanization of acquisitions to win and looking to create this training integration office where we'll be hiring in a technical director, specifically with the technical chops to be able to look very deeply down and in and very hard at how we're doing things across the spectrum of simulation. And then to be able to help us drive more of that architecture approach. So Colonel Jaime walked us through the kind of that Lego chart and the foundational piece of that, and then how we build off of that. I am looking to a training integration office really to ensure that we're driving that enterprise type solution, as Colonel Fronick had talked about earlier in his slide, on how we do that. And so this training integration office is going to stand up with a technical director, with some program managers and some key subject matter expertise to really help us there. They're focused on four main priorities you can see there. One is architectures, two is where are we going to be in 10 years? So what is the training 2035 vision? And so what does that mean from PEO training perspective? Some of that is internally. How are we going to look across the acquisition portfolio within the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center? Are there opportunities out there where training is not actually being done in our portfolio that perhaps should be done in our portfolio to ensure that we're leveraging and capturing all those synergies? What is our roadmap? And so working with the major commands and understanding where they are going and where they want training to be. Colonel Fronick mentioned the concurrency problem where our training systems don't align to the major weapon systems. How are we going to get after that? And when we do go after that, when we go after that concurrency problem, are we doing it in the most effective way? Are we embracing SCARs? Are we embracing any of the, where applicable, the JSC native architectures, so that as we continue to maintain these systems, we're doing so in a way, or modifying the systems, we're doing so in a way that's posturing that system to be a part of a broader ecosystem once determined. And then the last thing is scaling AI, a broad statement, and frankly, I am truly naive on the technology, and so there are pockets of expertise within PEO training, and what we want to do is to scale that technology, one, to understand how it can have more applicability into what I'll call our business operations. How do we do business day in and day out? Again, to be at the speed of relevance. So how can artificial intelligence help us be able to release proposals, to be able to evaluate proposals, to compress that timeline it takes us to get on contract? And then, as Colonel Jaime indicated, what are the AI technologies that are out there from a data management perspective that is being collected as it relates to the competencies and proficiency perspective that our pilots and/or maintainers are going through from a training perspective. So it's a broad spectrum when we say scale AI. I consider it both internal to the organization, and then secondly, delivering capability and to ensure to inform the applicable stakeholders. You can see our objectives and deliverables. So we're going to be building that roadmap. We're going to create the common system simulator baseline. Work with our AATC partners. They have a lot of initiatives going on, and frankly, again, this organization is just a year old, so we're still learning. There's still opportunities out there to, I think, expand, the training ecosystem. General Quinn was up on stage yesterday, talking about his main focus is people, right, and making sure they have mission-ready airmen at the time of need. And so a lot of our things are very focused on pilot proficiency, pilot production, maintenance, proficiency, maintenance training. There's so much more out there, and so it's working with our AATC teammates to see if there are opportunities that we should be aligning towards. And then the last is the industry outreach. So I guess one of my things I would ask is that, so this training integration office, we intend on standing it up at the beginning of the new year. We were slightly delayed on really talking about as an organization due to the government shutdown, but in the new year we're going to be kicking it off. We want to create forums that allows us to have additional engagement similar to this, right? We owe more collaborative conversations. Rick mentioned CRADAs, and so it's an opportunity where if you, as an industry partner, have technology that you want to bring to us, but yet we don't have a contract with you, it's about how do we establish those, those linkages so that it allows you to continue to expand on your technologies. And so we need to look internally to our organization to ensure that we have the right means in place that allows us to have the largest access to the industrial base to get after the mission objectives we're responsible for. And the last is consortiums. It was mentioned in Mr. Bailey in the fireside chat yesterday morning. He talked about and he referenced one example. So within fighters and advanced aircraft and those in the next generation air dominance system and the collaborative combat aircraft, they're building everything on this AMS GRA. So it's a mission system GRA, government reference architecture, but they're creating consortiums that allows industry to be a part of so that you can start to compete for what I'll call those apps, right? Those and Rick talked about it in line of effort number 3 is a SCARS perspective. We need to start, again, taking a look internally to ourselves to ensure that we're putting the necessary ways and means in place to harvest all the greatness and goodness that each of your companies bring to the fight. Okay, and then I think that, so I will, I think this is my last slide, and then if there are questions, I'll start taking them. Want to just say thank you for the panelists, especially Rick as he's drinking his water down there. So, but thanks to Colonel Jaime and Colonel Faronic for their presentation. Thanks for listening in. I look forward to your questions. PEO training, at the end of the day, and this is a quote that our former Chief of Staff, General Alvin, had stated at AFA. It's, the America needs more Air Force and the right Air Force. So a lot of that really resonates with me personally. I mean, it's not more Air Force as it relates to throwing more money at a particular problem. Yes, it does take investment, it does take dollars. But in the Arsenal of Freedom construct out there, it's about industry also putting skin in the game, one. It's 2, then how do we do things differently to deliver that more Air Force with the resources that we have? And there may be opportunities there. And it could be as far as how we train our airmen and our operators so that there's more Air Force from a readiness perspective. And then again, we look forward to continuing to partner with our industry partners through forums like this, like ITSEC, and the other community forums that we have associated in modeling simulation. And lastly, our training integration office will be standing up and we'll start communicating that. Okay, so with that, I think I'll leave that there and I'll take questions. Okay. All right, so one for the panel. You're the panel.
What are the other 2?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Rick.
Perfect.
Popular man.
Perfect.
All right, so to the panel. Okay, written, thank you for, so Jared Mertz from LMOC wrote this. So with cybersecurity requirements becoming more stringent, as mentioned by the panel, are there efforts to engage with NSA leadership in order to find potential compliance compromises?
I could definitely take that one. Not NSA specifically, but led by the boss, we've had dialogue at the SAF-CN and OTTI, half A3 level, talking about that exact issue. I covered a lot of it, talking about antiquated systems and old operating systems and just, frankly, not applicable controls. My training systems are never going to host PII, for instance. They're not going to be connected to Wi-Fi. They're not going to be, sorry, I can't come up with a third, so I'll stick with those 2 examples. And yet, from a compliance perspective, I have to go write POAMs talking about that. It's a complete waste of time. Sorry, to put it bluntly, it is a complete waste. Why do I need to go address something that my systems will never support or do, right? So again, led by the boss, we started the conversations. We have been told there will be, I'll say, special dispensation, some sort of relief given, but we don't know what that looks like just yet. And in fact, Mr. Sheehy was on a panel yesterday. He's going to become our new authorizing official. He led the conversation just earlier this week with Mr. Bishop at SAF-CN. The conversations are certainly happening. Now it's about getting down to the level of detail that we can actually go implement, if that makes sense. Rick?
Yeah, I would say that we have constant collaboration and communications with our AOs for the different classification levels. I know that one option is to go to NSA, but I think that would be the last resort from how long it would take to get something approved. So I think working with SAF-CN, and we can work it at the AO level for LMOC, for example. I know we're working on how do we get SAP approval for that, for what we're doing there for LMOC.
Yeah, I would just offer to build off what Nick and Rick has stated. So again, SAF-CN is kind of our belly button as it relates to the cybersecurity compliance and the control measures we have to put in place. I would just, maybe this is an ask and an information, is we continue to work with senior Air Force leadership on balancing what is the right risk. It's a matter of information, right? So putting these controls in place takes time and it takes money, and that money, is, well, I would say we don't print money off of trees, but we're in a fiscally constrained environment, and so it's a matter of making sure we're optimizing the right amount of risk. So we'll be looking to industry to help us, inform us of what would it cost to actually take a particular simulator to get it to a certain compliance level through the lens of what SAF-CN is asking. We've been tasked as kind of arbitrarily, within the next 2 years, we have to put together plan of actions and milestones on our fielded simulating systems that's going to get us in compliance to the SAF-CN guidelines. A part of that is going to be what are the resources that are going to be needed to do that, and does it make sense given all the other measures that are in place that Colonel Faronic was talking about. So to industry, we look forward to your advice and help in the sense of just giving us better information so that we can make an informed decision as an Air Force on how we go about optimizing operational risks against programmatic cybersecurity risks. It's a great question. Okay, Colonel Jaime, here we go. Next question. It's to you, sir. Okay. Okay, so Colonel Jaime, number one, under what contract will FOPPers be released? So I guess the FOPPers are a reference under your JAC
That's
slide.
FOPPers TSA-4. So it's an IDIQ that we have in collaboration with WNS.
Okay.
It's a 10-year IDIQ. I think we're in year 2. So there's plenty of ceiling left and plenty of time left, but that's it.
Okay, you got that right. Colonel Kovacic actually wrote the answers down on here, and so well done. Okay.
This is more of a test from your
I passed.
Well,
B+.
well done, sir.
All right.
I was like, well, the answers are right here. Why did they ask?
Just give it back to them.
Okay. Who is the lead contractor providing grid, or is it organic?
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of JAC being a government-owned solution. So that is NOC-AD in collaboration with the SWACs. The three SWACs, Hill, Tinker, and Robbins, and then PAX is still leading that effort. But it's the environment itself, it's organic. And then the PIAPs, the weapons, that's where we need industry help because you guys, that's your bread and butter for those solutions.
You're 2 for 2. Colonel Kovacic circled organic. Well done. Okay, number 3. This is a 3-part question, so thanks to GD Mission Systems for submitting. Environment to demo ability to integrate with grid. What is the environment to demo ability to integrate with grid?
Oh, it would be in your sales. I mean, I think that's what I would mention, what I mentioned, the industry help. To demonstrate, it would be, if you have a contract or a CRADA, we would give you everything you need to test out the environment with your solution, the test harness, the JAC kit. And so if it's for your unique solution, when you come talk to us, we can give you that data at your sale and provide it to you.
Got a 100%. So it says, so again, so WNR, come to work with us. Air Force Sustainment Center, so we talked to SWAG, so the software engineering group out of our teammates at the Air Force Sustainment Center. Support opportunities for the demonstrations, and so if you contact us, we'll help connect the dots. Okay, Colonel Jaime, this one's for you as well. With many programs moving to JSC, how will DMOs support the new JSC grid standard?
Well, I think the DMO standards are going to keep maturing for the DMO mission itself. We're looking at potentially doing some distributed or JSC or federated JSC operations. That's something that's in the CDD from ACC that we, at some point, there's no timestamp. We have to provide a capability to do distributed JSC, and the DMO would be the network that would likely stitch them together. So we're actually working with ACC on doing a phase approach where we're trying to determine how do we test out entities that are on the environment, like digis, how do we actually test them to make sure they can communicate. And then a second phase would be more capabilities from the grid, communicating with each other at geographically separated distances, and eventually can we do it for the F-35 at the JOES. And that is along, the physics, the speed of light would be an issue because of how the data that is very specific or requires low latency. And that would be the issue, and the thing that we need to explore to see if we can actually get after is the loss of physics, to see if we can actually do distributed JSC when we're talking about tying 4 F-35s from Hill, for example, to 4 F-35s from Luke. What things can we do locally versus what things do really need to be moved through the network itself to be able to make sure that the mission and the whole purpose of JSC in a distributed fashion does what it's supposed to do. So.
Well done, and your team highlighted too also the disk to grid gateway, so there's an opportunity for a connection there from a technical perspective. We'll give you 95 on that one. Okay.
Still an A, man.
Okay, so this question was to myself, so thanks for the question. So the Strategic 2035 plan is great. Is there any initiative to get multi-year funding to support the initiative's versions in the current one-year budget approach? Yeah, it's a great question. Frankly, it's something that we need to figure out. Under the new Acquisition Transformation Initiative that Secretary Hegseth, Honorable Duffy has put out, there's the creation of these program acquisition executives and the authorities that these PAEs, so essentially no longer PEOs, but these PAEs will have in place to drive a mission outcome. To be able to drive that mission outcome, you obviously require resources. For us, it's unique on how our resources come into the program offices, specifically Colonel Feronic's program office, where essentially it comes in from the major weapons system. So it's not actually a program element that the simulators division has to be able to control a particular outcome. It's working very closely with the program office, F-15, C-5, C-17, their applicable MAGCOM, Air Combat Command, Air Mobility Command, to determine how that money is distributed, whether it goes to, let's put a different capability on the F-15, or let's give money to the Propulsion Directorate to work an engine issue, or let's give money to Colonel Feronic and his team to work a simulators issue. And so that's the way the current system is set up, and that poses a lot of challenges, because frankly, the program office is making a determination what the priority is for that major weapon system. And frankly, in my short tenure here, and again, I grew up in the fighter world, what I've seen is it's unfortunate in the sense that training is one of the last things that's thought about, right? I mean, General Ploy stated we need to address our concurrency problem. The reason why I put it out there is because we have a concurrency problem because the money's not being applied to the simulators to get after the concurrency problem. And so it's just a matter of how we optimize that. So a lot of words for me to say is under this new acquisition transformation, I think this is an opportunity to work with senior leadership on how maybe we can fund simulators differently. How do we actually allow Colonel Feronic and his team to have his own program element that allows us to drive after some of the opportunities that we've just presented to you today from an enterprise integration perspective, and or whether it's just establishing, we have to work through that. So multi-year means a lot. Multi-year, you usually have to go to Congress to get that approach. I don't necessarily believe this would qualify for a multi-year, but I think what the solution is how do we change the mindset of how funding comes into PEO training, rather not distributed, but actually having your own PE that we work through the POM process on with half A35 or alike, that allows us to start to control that mission outcome that we've been charged to deliver. Any other questions? Okay. All right, this isn't anyone.
He didn't answer it.
Okay.
Just read the answer.
Let me. Okay, so I'll just read it. So given that the vast majority of Air Force aircraft are stationed at Guard and Reserve bases, and JSC today is only available at our range training bases, i.e. Nellis, what are you doing to extend JSC capability to those bases and deployed units? So thank you for Cubic that submitted that.
Yeah, so we're looking at, like I said earlier, the regional centers is where we are funded for, and that's where the requirement is, but we're exploring local training as well, primarily for F-35, but we're also going to explore the possibility of adding F-22s as well. That is still in the very early phases from a cost, can we afford it in the schedule perspective. I mean, the long goal we can put F-35 operational enclaves at each of the Guard bases for the respective training systems that are there that need the environment. So there's nothing that, from a cost schedule perspective, that could stop us, except for the timelines. It could be It's not going to be a tomorrow kind of thing. It's going to take us some time to be able to distribute that capability to all the sites. The funding needs to be there, and the requirement and the demand signal has to be there as well. But it's something that is definitely within the art of the possible.
But in the near term, fundamentally you're talking about, regardless of your total force affiliation, active duty, guard, or reserve, you are going to a JITIC train in JSE.
Correct.
So it's really,
it's just
doesn't matter
whether you
what-
get on a plane to travel to Niles
Right.
or Pax River today, or you wait until the capability comes to your home base. That is really the dilemma. But the opportunity is there to get into a JSC, to a PIAP, and do some training today.
Right, I would just, offer, so working with Air Combat Command, they've charged us to look at how do you do these distributed, mini JATs, is that what we're calling it? JOEs.
So that's for the F-35, JSC
Yeah, that's for the
Operation
F-35, but essentially an agnostic type of a JSC that is going to be distributed right now, F-35s, and then potentially in the future. But currently, the framework and construct is you go to a JITIC, so currently at Nellis, and then one in the budget is for Elmendorf, so working with the 11th Air Force and the 3rd Wing up there in that respect. Their ACC, who is lead command on this, working very closely with all of the other respective MAJCOMs, will be the ones who we will work with on if there's going to be a distributed type JSC opportunity at the respective Guard and Reserve bases. Okay, any other questions? Just looking back there for any cards. All right, so I guess we're almost near the end, so I'm going to hand the mic off to the two gentlemen to my left for any closing comments, and then we'll close things out.
I'm going to touch on culture. The boss mentioned it previously, but I didn't have anything about it in my my one big beautiful chart. For me, the culture thing is sort of paramount, foundational to all of this, and I see it in two ways: internal to me, the government, my team, and then external to the broader. We keep saying team. I'm going to change to family, and I'll tell you why in a second. Internally, my team needs to hear this, and they've heard me say it a lot, but we have to, and I think it's what Secretary Hegseth on down has said, is we got to stop with the business as usual, bureaucracy as usual mindset. That all needs to die, right? And that's for us and internal to government to go figure out. But external, we say, in fact, I said it, I think earlier, this team, right? Industry, our MAJCOM partners, and the SPO. I'm going to give an analogy more like a family, because when I go home, I have 3 boys. My boys are always warring, right? They're always fighting internal to the family. But once we leave the family and we're going to go talk to somebody else outside the family, we're all, smiles, and we have one message, and we're consistent, and we're a happy group. And so that's why what I want to ask of all of you is, and I've talked to a couple companies this week about it, we have to have that same mentality. So my team can't talk about us versus them when we're talking about the MAJCOM or we're talking about industry. And industry can't talk about us versus them when we're talking about a CAE and a SimStar. And sorry if I didn't mention your company's name, but insert here. We can't be bad-mouthing across those lines, right? We are truly trying to make something happen in a new way, in the mindset and the culture shift. And so we need all of your help with that, because my team and the junior folks that we employ trying to award contracts, they're sort of brought up in the system of, the contractor, the industry partner is just out to, frankly, screw us and make more money, right? We have to get out of that mindset, absolutely have to get out of that mindset. But when industry's talking about each other in a negative way, it sort of fosters that mindset internal to government. So that's been my sort of plea to the companies I've met with is, help me shape that culture, right? When you go to the MAJCOMs, let's talk about the family. When MAJCOMs come to see us, let's talk about the family. Let's not point fingers at any one of the 3 entities, because all of us have to be in this together to make it successful and to change the way we're doing business. So sorry, I got a little philosophical there, sir, but I think it's important.
Great words.
I would just echo what he said: collaboration, transparency, open communications with our operators, our users, our interested partners. We can't do it by ourselves. This is a team effort. I'll just like to highlight, I mentioned SCARS and JSC, but I have folks here from Hill, have my divisions at Hill, I have a few more folks at Hill than I do at Wright Pat. So I just have to take this opportunity to say in the 4 months I've been here how proud I am of joining this 425-person team, LMOC, P5, P6, FMS partners, all the range threat system emitters. Our motto is deliver the skill to kill. And our new chief of staff sent an email to the force the day after he was sworn in, where he clearly said one of our priorities is to deliver aircrew proficiency to generate lethal combat power. And I believe in WNR, we're right in the midst of doing that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great words. I'll just bring us home just to one, say thanks for taking time out of your day to join us at the first 08:30 this morning. So truly appreciate each and all of you being here to hear us speak to you and for the questions. I would just ask us all, and this is for all of us, right? And again, both Nick and Rick really hit this. As a family, we need to be candid, right? And there's a way that we can have professional rapport and have conversation with each other as far as what we may be doing wrong, and if we highlight something that we feel you may be doing wrong, it's just candid conversation. We are in this together as a family. Sometimes we may have those internal brotherly fights, and there's times when we're going to behave ourselves. But challenge us. If there are things that you think that we are missing out on an opportunity to do things differently, challenge us. Let us know. I would ask that you be patient with us. So I talked about the training integration office. It's going to take us some time to get our feet underneath us, but that organization, that office is really intended to kind of be that storefront on how we need to do things differently and how can we capture some additional opportunities from our industry partners in that respect. And then I would just, again, as the two gentlemen talked here, even if we don't ask for it, which we should, but if we're asking for a modification, we don't ask for it to pursue modular open system approaches and SCARs and JSE, and it's not in there, that doesn't mean you don't have to bid to it. Embrace it. Let's all start getting on the point where challenge us to say, hey, you didn't put that requirement in here. Why aren't we doing SCARs here, right? And so we really need to embrace that approach. And that's the whole thing about the Arsenal of Freedom is it really is a partnership amongst us all. So keep us honest in that respect. And again, I just say thanks for participating. Have a great ITSEC conference for what remains for the next day and a half, and safe travels for those who are leaving the Orlando area in the next day or so. All right, thank you.